In Fallout 4, there's a loading screen that occasionally poses the question, would it be fun to walk around and shoot people with a portable naval cannon? I'm here today to answer that, as I also ask the question, can you beat Fallout 4 with only the old guns? As the title implies, this run is dedicated to the Broadsider and its cousin, the Minutemen Artillery. The Broadsider is a unique weapon from the quest Last Voyage of the USS Constitution, given as a reward for siding with Captain Ironsides and his crew of barely functioning robots. Being as chunky as it is classed as a heavy weapon that lobs explosive cannonballs at targets. The ammo for it is also incredibly rare and only appears after completing its associated quest. More on that later. Artillery is the reward for completing the Minutemen main quest, The Old Guns, which unlocks the ability to construct artillery emplacements at your settlements. The emplacements themselves can be used to call in artillery strikes on targets in the overworld with the use of artillery smoke grenades. The fire mission has a small delay on startup, meaning that I will have to predict my target's field of movement, but the result is always satisfying to watch. The ground rules for this challenge are as follows. I must use only the Broadsider and Minutemen Artillery to defeat my enemies. I will be playing this on normal difficulty. I must complete the main quest, and as a couple of personal rules, I will not be using any power armor, companions, and I must use the Minutemen General's uniform and Lieutenant's hat once I acquire those pieces of equipment. Starting out in Vault 111, and like last time, the Rad Roaches are free to live as I lock them behind the doors and sneak out through the elevator. My special stats are as follows. Strength will be set at 5 for the Heavy Gunner perk, Perception is at 4 and later boosting it to 5 so I can take Demolitions Expert, Intelligence will be set to 10 for the increased experience gains and to help him get my primary weapon in a timely manner. The rest of my points got thrown around where I figured that they would be helpful for my survivability. Without a way to properly defend myself, my first port of call is Charlestown, as I will be working with Ironsides to get the Broadsider as soon as possible. On arrival, I greet the nearby scavengers, who promptly tell me to piss off. Rude. Putting them in my rear view, I meet the lookout, who greets me and informs me that I have been drafted and need to report to the captain up on deck. The captain then informs me of his predicament and his plan to launch the USS Constitution from its perch and into the ocean to fight the Chinese. I can get behind that. No sooner does the robot give me my orders than the scavengers decide they stand a chance against Old Ironsides and her metallic crew and attempt to board. I am briefly worried that I will not be able to pitch in when I am told to go man the cannons to scare them off. After all, what scares people more than a 6-inch naval gun being fired in the general direction? Victorious this time, I get to work for the navigator and bosun. My first task is to get the guidance chip back from the scavengers. Remembering their less than friendly greeting earlier, I pretend to work with them so they'll let me have the guidance chip back without bloodshed. This quest is one of the very few in the base game that still uses skill checks, so I get a chance to flex the muscle between my ears and fix almost all of the robot's problems without leaving the ship, all the while wishing that there were more quests that made use of something other than charisma or violence as a means to progress. Ironsides is pleased by my efforts and sends me off to find the last part that he needs to send his ship off to God knows where. When I check the location on my map, I'm in disbelief as I need to head to Fort Hagen to get the bearings. Not only is it on the opposite side of the map, but I also have no fast travel points nearby, and the place is swarming with synths, even before the point in the story where you go to confront Kellogg. The actual trek to the fort takes me through downtown Boston, where I mark a few locations for later and avoid anything resembling a threat. While I run through Fort Hagen, let me explain my plan for the rest of the run. First and foremost, I am siding with the Minutemen today, as I'll be making extensive use of their artillery where I can. I will also be recruiting every settlement that allows me to build said artillery, as this will give me an excuse to go side questing. I will also be grabbing any caches of cannonballs that spawn naturally in the world, since the ammo for the Broadsider is very rare. With the turbo pump bearings now in my possession, I zip on back to the Constitution, fix up the boat, and engage the scavengers one last time. Like last time, I broadside the scavengers every chance I get, although my first attempt ends up with me being disarmed by a missile fired by either the scavengers or Ironsides. I've rewatched the footage several times, and I'm still not sure who caused that one. As a thanks for indulging his delusions, Captain Ironsides gives me a cannon as a souvenir, along with a few cannonballs, and then sends me off to start the auxiliary power. I light the candle and watch the USS Constitution fly off triumphantly into the one skyscraper in its path. For curiosity's sake, I checked my stats after the fact, as I noticed that the kills with the ship's cannons were not giving me any XP. It seems the Constitution's cannons are classified as environmental kills, despite me pulling the trigger. If you believe this invalidates the run, please let me know in the comments. But I'm choosing to believe that these cannons are the same ones that Ironsides gives you at the end of the quest. Either way, the quest is complete, so I start heading back towards Concord. Except that I forgot something on the ship. So I mosey on back to the Constitution via the somehow working elevators in the destroyed skyscraper. My excitement for the new headwear gets the better of me, and I end up stuck in a piece of rubble for a couple of minutes. Luckily, I can just fast travel back to the ship to unstick myself. Chatting with Ironsides again gives me a hat and a promotion to lieutenant. Now 20% more fashionable, it's off to Concord for real this time to rescue the Minutemen from the museum. Inside the museum, I put the antique through its paces. Here I learned several things about this weapon that I've only occasionally used in the past. First and foremost, the actual cannonball has a distinct arc to it. Secondly, it's very slow to reload. If I had to compare it to anything, I'd say it's like reloading a fat man after every shot, so I'll have to keep that in mind in case I get surrounded. On a positive note, the weapon is very powerful and has a small explosion radius, so I can take out multiple enemies with a single shot if they're grouped together. Firing the weapon in VATS also gives generally good results, as the cannon has surprisingly long effective range. Something I did not realize until later is that the Scrounger perk does not add cannonballs into the random containers, so ammo is going to easily be the biggest pain of this run. With the raiders inside cleared, Preston and Sturgis suggest using the nearby minigun and power armor to thin out the raiders outside. I smile and nod along, knowing full well that both of those will continue to gather rust as I head out to the street to play catch with the raiders. The first few fall like dominoes, but I sorely underestimated the number of raiders compared to my stockpile of shells. Like a good officer, I enlist the assistance of the nearby Deathclaw to help thin out the rest of the gang. While he does that, I dip out to get a resupply, as cannonballs are added to the inventory of various merchants after the USS Constitution quest. Quartermaster Cricket comes to my aid, and I am back in a flash, and the Corporal Claw has cleared Concord of the criminals. From there, I escort the museum refugees towards Sanctuary, and Preston thanks me by pointing me towards the first of many settlements that needs my help. As usual, he sends me off to Ten Pines Bluff first. Along the way, I get into a disagreement with the gang occupying the old USAF station. Ak here cannot stand up to Boom Boom, so I secure the locket for the Abernathys later and run out with the rest of the gang hot on my heels. Preservation of ammo is second only to preservation of life at this stage. Of course, I immediately disregard my own advice and play fetch with one of the nearby stray dogs, but that's neither here nor there. Unsurprisingly, the settlers at Ten Pines send me off to deal with Jared and the rest of his gang over in Lexington. Along the way, I also claim Starlight for the Minutemen, leaving me with exactly 0 cannonballs to my name. I put the settlers' request on hold for a few minutes while I tried to acquire more cannonballs. By this time, I was still unaware of the Scrounger issues, so I hit up my usual spots for ammo before ending up in Sunshine Tidings. Coming up empty and wanting to claim the settlement, I enlist the local hippie Professor Goodfields to exterminate the vermin infesting the co-op. He puts up a good fight against the roaches and ghouls that are drawn to his line of fire, killing almost all of them by himself. I then watch in disbelief as the last rad roach proves to be too much for him, and he falls. I avenge him by beating the roach to death with my cannon and take a moment of silence to mourn the good professor. The co-op just lost a ray of sunshine, and things here will be much darker for it. With that heartbreak behind me, I do the rounds at Diamond City and Goodneighbor for ammo. Finding none, I decided that getting to my secondary objective would be the best way forward. To that end, I'm off to Fort Strong. Not for the Brotherhood this time, but for the handful of cannonballs on display by the gun batteries outside the main building. That's one of the caches secured, and now I have enough firepower to take on the task for Ten Pines Bluff. I'm very sparing with my ammo inside the assembly plant, and managed to get a pretty cinematic-looking kill on Jared from stealth. With the gang's leader dead, I slink back outside and report my success to the settlers and then to Preston, who promotes me to general, setting the record for the fastest military career progression in history. My next stop is Oberlin Station. Along the way, I demonstrate the teachings of Master Kenobi as I take the high ground and leave the legendary Raider looking like an undercooked Anakin. I was expecting to be sent to Backstreet Apparel, but the Settler Sisters threw me a curveball and sent me to the Federal Ration stockpile instead. Having some prior experience with this game and not nearly enough gun to rain hell on the Raiders, I slip in through the back door of the church and deal with Red the same way I dealt with Jared. Turning the quest into Preston has us progress to taking back the castle. I tell him that I'll meet him there and hoof it southeast towards Fort Independence. I sidestep some Mirelurks near the lake and indirectly get one of my soldiers killed as they fought the crab and detonated a nearby car. With the bodies piling up and weighing on my conscience, I elect to go in first and thin out the crabs infesting the fort. My efforts amount little, however, as the other non-essential Minutemen dies before we can even breach the courtyard. I'm normally not fond of gun bashing when doing weapon-restricted runs, but I do make the exception here for the hatchlings as there are far too many of them to warrant a portable bombardment, so they end up getting the broadside of my cannon instead. When dealing with a legendary glowing Mirelurk, my propensity towards being the bait comes in handy as I keep the crippled crab's claws pointed in my direction, while Preston cooks up some crab cakes. Clearing the rest of the wall goes well until the Queen decides to come in and see what's causing all the commotion. As per usual, I run through my limited ammo, whittling down Mama Crab, and resolve myself to running distraction, while Preston and the radio men take turns getting up, getting shots off, and then taking a breather. It took just under 8 minutes for the DJ to dethrone the Queen. By right of combat, that makes the radio man the king of the castle, as he was the one who put the last round into the Queen's shell. With the castle now in the hands of the Minutemen, I head downstairs to clean up the landmines left by my predecessor, collect the second cache of cannonballs, and then decommission Sarge to save time later. From here, it's back to Diamond City, which was appropriately decorated for the spooky season. I checked in with Arturo and Myrna for ammo and waited at Power Noodles for a couple of days until I received a notification on the radio that Ronnie Shaw had arrived at the castle. She and I have a quick chat, then make our way down to the armory by way of the castle tunnels. Down below, I take General Montresor's uniform, completing my low-budget Napoleon Bonaparte cosplay, and admire the old man's brickwork over a bottle of Amontillado. Inside the armory, I comb the shelves for any cannonballs, as they may sometimes spawn in here. Sadly, there were none, so I grab the artillery supplies and go about setting up the cannons. I watch the test fire, already giddy at the thought of the destruction I can cause with my new toy. With my business at the fort complete, I return to Preston to complete the quest and set about gathering supplies for the artillery batteries at the rest of my settlements. From here, it's back to Diamond City yet again. Not to progress the main quest this time, but to get caught up in some side activities for XP. First off was recruiting Sheffield to convert him from rags to red leg at the truck stop by Sanctuary. Next was Piper's interview, and I finally stopped off at the Dugout Inn to pick up some work for the Cabots, mostly for the Charisma bobblehead. Now, Edward wants me to see what happened to a shipment of serums near the insane asylum. Along the way, I took a quick detour to rescue a hostage for Greentop Nursery, which Preston asked me to look into earlier. Being the good Samaritan I am, I also provide the settlers a mortar to defend themselves with. Getting further sidetracked, I pick up and complete the mission for the Slog, which just involves putting warheads on mutant foreheads over at Bankcart Banks. With that bit of business done, I recover the serum for Edward, who then sends me off to bring Jack's sister home. Tired of being a delivery boy for the Immortals, I lie to Edward by telling him that I will go and do that, and then wander off into the night to do something better with my time. I go about gathering more settlements before taking on Park Street Station, but that's like saying I went ammo shopping at this point. The triggermen inside went down to one shot each when my ordnance finally found its target. Inside the vault itself, the ammo problem reared its head again, and I ended up booking it through the second half in order to save cannonballs for Skinny and his crew.
Shoot up my guys? You have any idea how much this...
Nick didn't seem terribly bothered by the outcome and opted to head to Diamond City ahead of me. I wanted to get as many settlement quests out of the way as possible before the midpoint in the main quest so that I could focus more on the story when the time came. To that end, it was off to clear up the northeast section of the map, so let's rattle those off quickly. My first port of call was Outpost Zimonia, where I showed Boomer the true meaning of boom. Taffington Boathouse was also on the receiving end of the artillery and may somehow be even less livable after the bombardment. The next stop was Finch Farm so I could call for fire on the Forged. Coastal Cottage was cleared of criminals and crabs quite quickly, and I also put out the light at the Kingsport Lighthouse. Crop Manor may or may not have also been on the business end of the cannon, who can really say. I also gunned down Phyllis at the Egret Tours Marina for replacing the welcome mat with a landmine. Lastly, I was chased into the Murkwater construction site by a pile of pink people. Neither they, nor the second Mirelurk Queen of the Run, would survive the encounter. From there, I made the spicy swim to Spectacle Island for the Luck Bobblehead. I'll be back to boil the crabs at a later time, as the tedium settlement quests had taken its toll on me by this point, and I really wanted to progress the main story. I'll be adding artillery in between recordings and making small improvements to the settlements, but nothing that should impact things going forward. After giving him time to settle in, I meet up with Nick for his interview, and from there it's off to Kellogg's house to pick up some smokes for Dogbeam. Then it's off to Fort Hagen once again to ignore all the synths for a second time thanks to the high energy resistance of the General's armor. I'm sure that Kellogg believes that being in an underground fortified bunker will make him safe from artillery. It will not. Outside, I watch the Goodyear blimp fly into the heart of the Commonwealth, which I will be using for target practice later, and return to Diamond City. From there, it's off to the Memory Den and the journey southwest to get yet another settlement and sail the Glowing Sea. The route that I took was infested with deathclaws this time around, and I was concerned that I would run out of ammo yet again before making it to Virgil's Cave, all the while having flashbacks to Turok with how many oversized lizards were coming at me. Big Green needs me to get a Corsa chip, so he sends me off once again into the CIT ruins. I channel my inner Mama Murphy at this point and use the power of foresight to instead head to Green Tech Genetics where I know the Corsa would be. The number of explosions rocking the building is doubled this time around thanks to yours truly, and I'm frankly surprised that we didn't cave the whole thing in on top of our heads. At the top of the tower, my portable battery blasts the Corsa back to the scrapyard and I swipe the chip. We go from a skyscraper to a crypt to lay the important bits of the Corsa to rest in the railroad's long-winded hands. I thank them for their assistance and leave, never to return. Back to Virgil, I get the plans, and thanks to my extensive supply network, I am able to quickly build the teleporter and infiltrate the Institute. I have a chat with Father, meet the department heads, and am sent off to Libertalia to deal with the Rogue Raider synth. The only thing of note that happened was the brief standoff I had with the Fat Man Raider on the way back down from the ship. He blinked first, and as a result, he got to walk the plank. Father is pleased by my actions and sends me to deal with the situation at Bunker Hill. Before I can join the battle, however, my Corsa friend has a heart attack or something, and I go to warn Father that the CIT ruins may or may not have been designated a firing range for the Minutemen. The Institute naturally blames me for their leader's stupidity, so I say goodbye to the eggheads for now. If it seems like I'm flying through the second half of the story, that's because I am. I've cut out a few hours of waiting for vendors to restock for the handful of cannonballs that I can purchase by this point. If I were a smart man, which I am not, I would have started Nuka World, as Aaron at the Nuka Town Market refreshes his stock every time you enter the marketplace, and I believe he has a chance to sell cannonballs. Oh well. The leaders of the Institute, or what's left of them, are rightly pissed about Sean's accident and send a legion of synths and coursers to lodge a formal complaint to the castle. I had hoped that enough turrets would dissuade them, but that was not the case, and I ended up going through my backstock of ordnance pretty quickly as they all attacked. Thanks to a little trick I picked up from watching Nurbit, I take a quick coffee break in the tunnels and head back up to convince the synths to leave. From there, I regroup with Ronnie and Preston to go over the plan. It was somewhere around this time that the artillery smoke grenade stopped working, and I could not for the life of me figure out why. The most information I had was that I couldn't hear Radio Freedom, and I just assumed that it bugged out in the middle of a fire mission, which has been known to happen. After an embarrassing amount of time, I finally went back to the castle to see if I could hear the radio over the fort's loudspeakers. Turns out that the generators powering the radio station had been damaged when the Institute attacked earlier. I had a little duct tape and elbow grease, and we are back up and running. The next step, of course, is to enter and destroy the Institute, but not before I make a quick stop off in Cambridge to send a message to the Brotherhood that my guns are bigger and they really shouldn't have all of their important people sitting on a lightly armored blimp filled with hydrogen gas. Getting in and putting the cannon to work again, I ignore their weak lasers being pointed at me and make my way down to the reactor where I plant the pulse charge, save the child because I'm not a complete monster, and then set off the bomb from a very safe distance with the broadsider. The ending cutscene plays and I finish the nuclear option, but there is one last bit of business to attend to. Resupplying and returning to the fort one final time, I get to watch as the King of Battle issues his decree, and the Prudhoe does its best Hindenburg impression over at the Boston airport. Rightly stirred up by this, the Brotherhood musters everything it can to throw at the Minutemen fort. I let the turrets and soldiers deal with any stragglers while I let the Bird War pilots get a close-up look at my balls of steel. Just like with the Institute, I run out of ammo midway through the fight and run around repairing turrets and drawing fire until the Brotherhood is sent packing back to Fallout 3. With that, all of my objectives are complete, and I can confirm that you can beat Fallout 4 with the old guns. Compared to the minigun run, this was kind of painful. The broadsider is a fantastic weapon in terms of damage per shot, but the ammo for it was so tedious to obtain that I found myself ignoring pretty much any random encounter that I came across, instead of having to wait for days at a time for vendors to maybe have a handful of cannonballs available for purchase. Clearing interior areas more often than not turned into running past all the nameless nobodies, having a ball with a target, and then rolling out under fire. On the flip side, using the artillery required so much setup that I simply opted not to use it for a majority of the run. Besides the fact that it can only be used outside and a majority of the important fights in Fallout 4 take place inside, I also have to have a settlement with a gun in range for it to be available. The smoke grenades themselves were easy to get a hold of, and I was never out of them. Anytime my target was outside, I often didn't have settlements nearby, and when I did have settlements nearby, I didn't have a good target. When the stars did align, however, I was having a ball sneaking in, popping a smoke, and then falling back to watch the fireworks. The Scrounger issue ended up being a blessing in disguise, as I could trade the ammo that I did pick up for supplies and cannonballs when they were available. So much of the playtime of this run was dedicated to jumping back and forth between Goodneighbor and Diamond City just so I could play the game somewhat normally. Even then, more often than not, I was out of ammo. Ultimately, I would strongly advise against using the broadsider as your primary weapon. It's great for taking out hard targets like vertibirds, mirelurks, and power armor, but the slow fire rate and the reload time leaves you open to getting swarmed. Next challenge will hopefully be a change of pace, depending on whether or not I can get New Vegas to record on my PlayStation or my PC. My thoughts aside, that's going to be the end of this challenge run. If you liked the video and would like to see more of it in the future, give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have an idea for a challenge run that you'd like to see, drop it in the comments down below. This has been Eric Uno, and I hope to see you in the next video.